So, if you've been listening to us for a while, we've been talking to you endlessly about ways that you can focus toward what you want. Now, we know that sometimes it's not very meaty or interesting to think about what you want when what you don't want is so vivid. But we want to demonstrate here at the beginning of this gathering in a way that you will really understand. It will help you to understand everything that unfolds later. It will help you understand many of the conversations that we're going to have today with people who are sitting in the hot seat. We want you to understand how this powerful law of attraction and this construction of thought works. So, it's easy to understand that there are things that you don't want, and it's relatively easy to understand that the clearer you are about what you don't want, the clearer you are about what you do want. But the thing that is tricky is that if you have been over time or even over a brief amount of time intensely, if you've been specifically, and intensity and specificity are the same things. In other words, the more attention you give, the more specific you get. And the more specific you are, then the more powerful your point of attraction is. Let's say that someone did something that bothered you, and you noticed it. It bothered you. You took the hit. You didn't like it. But you didn't leave it there. You thought about it longer. In fact, you stewed over it. You brooded over it. You pondered it. You seethed over it. You thought about it. You felt the offness of it. Initially, you felt the I don't want thisness of it. But you didn't leave it there because you have forgotten how powerful you are and you've forgotten about the construction of these pathways. So you thought about it and you stewed about it. And as you stewed about it, the first thing that happened is every other thing that that person has ever done that's sort of like that begins to come to your mind, because law of attraction is gathering up all the cooperative components. So everything they've ever done that was ever even a little bit like that come to your mind, and now you're justified. You explain to yourself and some innocent bystander that walks into your experience, I'm not making this stuff up. You say, I'm not making this up. And then the next thing that happens is law of attraction reaches further than just in your thought ways. It reaches out into the environment that surrounds you and brings to you the cooperative components of other people who have that same issue active in their vibration. And now you've got a real festival going. Now you're having conversations. So now what we're getting at is something that started out maybe sort of general has now become more and more and more and more and more and more and more specific. And it's gathering power, not because it in and of itself is a powerful thing, but by your attention to it. When we say something gathers power, what we're really talking about is the construction of thought waves power, because there are a lot of things that are powerful out there that if they're not active in your vibration, they're not going to show themselves to you at all. And so it doesn't matter how powerful they are. There's no law of assertion in this universe. Nothing can come after you. You got to be a cooperative component to each and everything that comes into your experience every single time. And if it's not active in your vibration, doesn't matter how big and bad and awful it seems to others who are engaged in it, it will not touch you in any way. It's law. Law of attraction will not bring it to you. So you've got this active thing going on, and as it's active, you're feeling it, and the more you think about it, the more specific it gets. So here's the thing that we want you to hear. You started out with a sort of general negative thing, but because you were not diligent about your thought, or maybe even knowledgeable about the power of your thought, you focused on it, and you got increasingly specific about this thing that you do not want. And as you got increasingly specific about this thing you do not want, it gained power. It gained attraction power to you. So now you really know what you don't want. So then some bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, non-physical source energy shows up in your experience and says, you create your own reality. And you really want to think about what you want. And when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. And if you've got something really specifically, therefore really powerful going on in your experience, your response to us is you would like to punch our lights out, because you can't all of a sudden get specifically positive when you've been specifically negative. So the point that we're making, that we really want you to hear, is you constructed a pathway that's really dishing out the goods to you. And the more it dishes them out, the more justified you feel in talking about them, in explaining them, in observing them, in blogging about them, in going to those intervention places about them. In other words, the more you don't want it, the bigger it gets. The bigger it gets, the more it comes. The more it comes, the more you give your attention to it. The more you give your attention to it, the bigger it gets. The bigger it gets, the more it comes, because you've built the pathways. So, what we're suggesting is that rather than letting an unwanted event train your vortex, train your vibration away from the vortex, train your vibration into compliance with unwanted things, where you just sort of go along with it because it's happening, we want you to be aware that you have the power of focus. And we want you to be aware that when you know what you don't want a little bit, you put its equivalent in your vortex. So when you sort of don't want something, you sort of want something, and that sort of wanted thing goes into your vortex. It's equivalent. It's the specifics of what you do want are equivalent to the specifics of what you don't want, and other way around. So by the time you've built something into this pathway of what you really don't want, you have, without knowing it, constructed a really specific what you do want over here in your vortex of creation. We call this vortex of creation, it's the bounce and the holding place where the evolved version of you is held in vibrational readiness for your attention to it. It's there. Now, if you're talking about manifestations, then you're probably not all that interested in these vibrational thought ways that have been carved out. But we want you to understand that the vibrational thought way that you've carved out is going to manifest depending upon where you eventually light in terms of your vibrational readiness. So we want to say to you, you can let unwanted things train your vibration into a match with what you don't want, and law of attraction will show you the evidence of where you are. Or you can let the vortex, which is the holding place for all things wanted, train you into a vibrational frequency, and the manifestation of those wanted things will show themselves to you. But what we really want, what we really want, what we want more than all other things put together, what we want, Jerry's always saying, Abraham, what do you want? What we want, 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 is that you will accept the construction of these thought ways prior to their manifestation. Because if you will accept the thought ways of these creations, if you will accept the creation of your vortex, if you will accept the creation of the unwanted things, if you will accept that they are being created by your attention and therefore by your creation of thought ways, if you will accept that they are being created long before they manifest, and you will pay attention to how you feel during the creation process, two things will happen. Two really good things. One, so much better than the other, but we're in disagreement with you about which one is the better thing. Two things will happen. One thing is sure, the manifestation of what you're focusing upon the most will happen. It will happen. It's law. It will happen. It's a done deal. It's a sure thing. It will happen. You will get what you are vibrationally active about. Better said, you're getting what you are vibrationally active about. So one thing, it will manifest. But the other thing is, and this is our favorite part of all of this, is that when you accept that this vortex is spinning and that this vortex contains the I know what I do want part of everything that you've been living, when you accept that and you let that vortex train you into vibrational compliance or alignment, then every step of your journey, even before the manifestation begins to reveal itself to you, is fun. It's pleasurable. You're frisky, you're full, you're inspired, you're enlightened. You feel that energy. You feel that enthusiasm. You feel that passion. You feel what a creator feels when you're moving in the direction of who you really are. So we want to remind you that the emotions that you feel are nothing more than, and oh, is it ever important what they are? They are nothing more than your indicator about whether you're moving down a thought pathway towards something unwanted or whether you're moving down a thought pathway towards something that you are wanting. In other words, every time you feel negative emotion, it always means the same thing. You're moving toward unwanted and away from wanted. Every time you feel positive emotion, it means you're moving toward wanted and away from unwanted. In other words, you're the focuser of all of that. Period. There is no getting around it. So when you use excuses like it's interesting, or it's happening, it's a world event, and it's happening, and I don't want to be unaware, when you use excuses like, well, I need to be informed, when you use excuses like, well, it's true, when you use excuses like, well, I need to explain it to someone, or they don't get me unless I really get involved, or I won't be taken seriously unless I have a really objective viewpoint about things. There are all kinds of such flawed reasoning, bogus reasons that you use for your explanation of why you focus away from who you are, that we come and get a little rowdy in our explanation that you are the creator of your experience and you are building constant thought ways. And you have come with the intention of selecting and joyfully moving down those pathways for the constant, never-ending, extraordinary discovery of what this magnificent universe can dish out to you as a representation of what you've got going on vibrationally. Years ago, Jerry found a book. It was called Think and Grow Rich. As he read it, he felt on fire about it because it taught him things that he did not consciously know that he knew. And as he read the book, it left many questions for him. Sometime after Jerry and Esther began their work with us, Jerry was making a presentation, a lecture in Phoenix, and a crowd about this size was listening to him telling a story from the book. And as Esther was sitting in the audience, new to Abraham, not new to Think and Grow Rich, not new to Jerry, new to her beginning understanding of vibration, meditating every day, having trained her vibration upward through meditation, so much so that she was now in clear communication with Abraham. As Jerry told this story that Esther had heard him tell many, many times, she felt herself infused with the energy of something unknown to her. And she found herself having to cling to her seat in order to be seated. And then she realized that she was receiving some sort of energy from someone similar to what Abraham is, but different, pointedly different. And then Esther realized that Napoleon Hill was blowing and flowing through her. Tears running down her face of his appreciation for Jerry's presentation of something from his groundbreaking, record-breaking, powerful book. So when Jerry finished his presentation, Esther rushed to the stage and said, come with me now. Come with me now. Come with me now. And she dragged him to the car in the parking lot, where Jerry sat and visited for an hour or more with Napoleon Hill. Jerry said, I've loved your book. It was transforming for me. He said, I know. Jerry said, if you were to do something different now, what would you do? He said, I would explain where it came from. I would talk more about infinite intelligence. I would talk about vibration. I would explain the vibrational dynamics of creation. Jerry said, why didn't you? He said, I did, but they wouldn't publish it. So Jerry and Esther proceeded down their path of visiting with Abraham as we put back into the context everything that had been edited out, talking about vibration. Then, years later, Jerry and Esther became involved in a project. It was to be a television presentation. It was The Secret. Of course, you've heard of it. And as The Secret evolved, which was to be its original contract with Jerry and Esther, it was to be a presentation of the work of Abraham. And as Jerry and Esther made their presentation, and we recorded many hours for the producer, everything that was remotely directed toward the idea of vibration was edited out. Again. Because this physical world that you live in apparently doesn't want to know about your vibrational root.